Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. So, our guest tonight, super interesting story. Absolutely excited to bring this to you guys. His name is Brent Rankin. He is a financial advisor. He is an investment, he directs investments at the company he works at. That is not at all how he started out his life. That is not at all the only thing he's done in his adult life. His story is so good for people to hear because you're going to hear a story of someone who had no idea what they wanted to do, kept trying different things to varying degrees of success, and refused to quit, refused to give up, kept putting himself in great situations until he worked his way into the current situation where he's at. Also, we had his wife on, Dr. Ashley Rankin, and we've already aired her episode. So if you haven't seen it, go back and check that out as well. And they actually work together. She is a psychologist. Her story is equally as interesting, and it has many of the same components in terms of not a lot of awesome stuff going on and having to work and fight and scratch and claw to get to where they're at. So, super interesting. Really excited to have Brent on the program. So, without further ado, let's bring him on now. So, Brent, thank you for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. It's great to have you aboard.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, you have the dubious honor of being the first couple because we had your wife, Ashley, on as a guest. We did her interview a couple of months ago. And after we were done, she said, "Hey, I think my husband's got a pretty interesting story." And then you and I connected. And I was like, "You're goddamn right. He's got an interesting story. You got to get this guy on to talk about all this stuff." So we're very excited to have you. Obviously, we had a great interview with Ashley, and she's such kind of an awesome person and is so candid about the path that she's followed and was so helpful with all of the wisdom and learnings that she shared. Um, I'm sure you will be the same, and you had a similarly non-linear path from where you started to where you're at. And so I'm sure you watched your wife's episode, at least parts of it. And the way we like to start at Salty Ginger Talk is to have you kind of give an overview of your life, and you can pick to start wherever you want. If there's important stuff in your childhood, start there. If it starts getting important from your view when you're an adult, start there. Doesn't matter to us. It's your story. And then we go back and kind of do deep dives on the inflection points, the important points, the things you learned, et cetera, et cetera. So we like to hear from you a lot more than we like to hear from me during these episodes. So with that, the floor is yours. Tell us about yourself.
Well, it's nice to be the first at something here on the podcast, even though I guess I'm the second in my house. So take the win where you can get it. But yeah, I grew up in a small town, Arizona. If you listen to Ashley's podcast, it's 20 minutes down the road from her. Yeah, so I grew up in a small town, Arizona. I think I had about 65 people in my graduating class. My dad went to the same school. He had about 55 in his class. So, you know, 20 something years later, the town didn't grow very much. So, everybody knew each other. It was a, lower class, lower middle class town. Yeah, a lot of like close families. Um, and when you have a small town, since everybody knows everybody, you know, anything bad that happens to anyone, the whole town feels. So, um, I had made the joke when we talked earlier that it was kind of like the Offspring song, "Kids Aren't All Right," where it's just one kind of bad thing after another. But I
Mm.
think anyone who grew up in a small town could probably say the same about where they grew up. But but yeah, childhood was good. Nothing to complain about. Grew up on a farm. So I guess that let's mark that as first weird job that led to where I'm at now. So grew up on a cotton farm. If I would have farmed, I would have been the fourth generation farmer in my family. Um, my dad, did a good job to encourage me to not just settle on the farm, but to go and figure out if I want to do something else. Um, and I was one of those kids, in high school, I never had an answer for what do you want to do when you grow up. And I'm still not 100% sure what I want to do when I grow up, but I'm getting a little bit closer to figuring it out. Uh, but yeah, I just never had an answer. Uh, I would say something with computers because in so I graduated high school 2003, so I had a pretty good idea that we would be using, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. Um, so like I said, my childhood wasn't really eventful. Just small town things happened to friends. I had a good group of friends, and some people stayed, a lot of people kind of drifted apart. Um, but I decided to didn't know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to go to college. Wanted to go to ASU where my friends were going. So I went to ASU and made it a solid 6 weeks at ASU before I realized I was in over my head. To go from a class of 65 people to uh, I don't know, one of my classes had 300. Walk between classes was people that I'd ever seen, in one place. So I kind of got a little overwhelmed with the idea of doing, um, 4 years. Probably would have taken me 6 years at the rate I was going. Let's call it 5 years to get a degree. I had like 18 books that I had to carry in my backpack. My $500 parking permit was right about 2 miles away from my first class. And then I had somehow managed to pick a class on each side of the campus like a pentagram. So I was like sprinting between classes. And um, I was thinking, this is for me. My roommate was a actual rocket scientist so much. So I had another friend who at the same time we graduated high school together, and he was going to it was called MMI, which is a Motorcycle Mechanics Institute. And we had been, ATV dirt bike riders growing up, off-road enthusiasts because we lived in a small desert town. So the the town is just surrounded by places you can ride and motocross tracks. So uh, when he went there, I was like, tell me about the program, and he showed me his homework, and it was like an engine schematic. I was like, oh, okay, this is this is a lot better. So told my parents I wanted to switch from going to ASU to going to this trade school for motor mechanics or motorcycle mechanics, and they were supportive. They said they had some money saved for me to go to school, but only enough for one school. So whether it was going to be ASU or this trade school, you know, it was I couldn't I couldn't do both. So uh, they were supportive, and then I switched, and then there was an overlap between when the trade school started and when ASU ended. So kind of went back to my parents' house down in Florence, worked on the farm for a few months until the trade school started, and then I started, you know, going to going to the trade school as opposed to going to ASU, and that was like the first big transition of I don't know what I'm going to do, but now I have sort of a path to go down. Something at least so specific that I can't just take general classes forever. So pretty narrow
Mm.
field to study at that point. Um, and then I was, I was fortunate enough to my dad had this friend that he went to high school with, a guy named Jeff. They call him the Bandit, one-arm bandit, because he lost an arm in a motorcycle incident when he was in high school. But he worked at a motorcycle dealership. So once I decided to go down that route, my dad got me in touch with him and offered me a minimum wage job, basically polishing the bikes and sweeping the floors and stuff like that. So I would go to the shop in Mesa in the morning, work until noon, and then I would drive to the trade school and go to trade school from 1 in the afternoon until 7 o'clock at night or whatever it was. So that was my that was my path for the next couple years after I decided ASU wasn't for me.
And these are, I'm assuming we're talking about like off-road bikes, right? We're not talking about like cruisers.
So the trade school is you're factory certified. So they have a Harley Davidson course, which I didn't do, but I did all the Japanese, Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki. So you become a factory certified technician to work on the entire lineup of of vehicles in their fleet. So anything, that they make, which is cruisers, sport bikes, dirt bikes, ATVs. Uh, this was before the side by side craze. So so yeah, a little bit of everything. Growing
Got
up,
it.
we were, off-road enthusiasts, but yeah, professionally trained to work on everything that they have to offer. The idea is you could go to a dealership, that had Suzuki on the sign, and you could work on anything that they sold or would come in for repairs.
Kind of like that's the mechanics version of being a veterinarian, right? I can do it all.
Yep, yep, exactly. Or if
Yeah,
you're a Ford mechanic, you have to work on Mustangs and F-350s and you know, minivans and whatever else. So same
sure.
same thing. Um, so yeah, so I worked, um, kind of worked part time while I was going to the school to get the certification, and then ended up the friend of mine who got me into the motorcycle school in the first place. He got this job down actually in Casa Grande, where Ashley was from, at a Suzuki dealership. Um, and there was an opening, so I kind of quit the one arm bandit place and went down to Casa Grande as soon as I graduated to work with these guys. Um, and it was just a small, like, new dealership getting started in Casa Grande, and this would have been 2005, six time period. So people had a lot of money to spend on toys. Everybody had a lifted truck and a toy hauler and toys to put in the back. So this was a sort of a booming business at the time. So I felt pretty fortunate to be able to make, 20 bucks an hour back then coming out of a trade school and, immediately using the stuff I learned. So uh yeah, it's a pretty good point in time. And then that would have been when I bought my first house, same same time period. But then, as we're working there, there's this other guy. He moved from California. Because there was a big wave of people selling their house in California, coming to Arizona, buying two or three houses at the same time. So he was one of those people. And we worked together. And he and I decided to start our own shop. And the idea was we were going to do high performance service, uh, like modifications to dirt bikes. And we would have a race team. We go to all the tracks because at the time Arizona had, I don't know, 5 or 10 different motocross tracks you could go to. Um, it was a real booming industry. Supercross was really big at the time. Um, so we started a shop '06, '07, starting to pick up. And then 2008 rolls around, and everyone who were our clients, we had kind of high roller clients who owned construction companies, real estate guys, housing developers, uh, and they all just got crushed in 2008, and we got swept out in the churn. Um, so yeah, it got to the point where we were just getting profitable, and then had to had to bail. Um, kind of defaulted on the loans, and I got sued by the uh, landlord for back rent and settled. And we had all this inventory we're trying to offload to recoup some of the losses. So uh, we we were a little overextended and just got swept up in the tide.
Well, it sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was
Your
going
brand new
great right
business.
until it did, though.
Yeah, right. You're, well, that's the thing, right? That's a good example of we have all sorts of different people on the podcast. The whole point of the podcast is to encourage people to build a life that has purpose and meaning to them. And they have to choose it. I can't tell you what that is. I just know it's important to have things in your life that are bigger than yourself, that mean more to yourself than you. And we have them tell their stories, which is what you're doing now. And so one of the things we try to get people to focus on when they to develop the right mindset is there are some things in your control and there are some things out of your control. The US housing crash was clearly out of your control, but it terribly impacted your business right at the cusp of success. When things are starting to take off, life kicks you in the teeth, and that's going to happen from time to time. Do you remember a certain point where you went, fuck, I'm done. I'm not this, I can't make it out of this. Did you ever have a moment like that?
It's unfortunately a slow, painful sort of grind down.
Yeah.
My partner had a big truck and he sold it and got a little truck, and I had a truck, got a smaller truck, and we had a big trailer we would haul to the shops. We sold that one and bought a cheaper one, or we'd haul to the races. Sold that, bought a cheaper one. We actually cut our building and we had rented 2 units side by side. We put our own wall up, abandoned the one side to try to cut the lease down. So we were we saw it coming. We felt the pain for a little while. We tried to hold out, but the crash was more prolonged. And if we were 2 years older, started 2 years earlier, maybe we would have had the reserves and the clientele to be able to withstand it. Um, but you know, like you said, you can't control things like that. So it swept us up. Um, and then we were basically just trying to like shrink it down as much as we could until it got to the point where it's like, I don't even think we should come into the office next week, and rent's due, so let's just Saturday night, let's just load up everything, put it in the trailer, and lock the doors and not come back. So um yeah, it was a slow bleed, and then we just kind of cut the cord,
Yeah.
um and just bailed out.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, and it was
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Keep talking.
oh, sorry. Yeah, and I had bought a house, um but I was still able to make the payments sort of up until that point. I had to borrow a little bit of money to hold me over, and then my partner and his wife had a young kid, and they bought a big house in Arizona, and had sold their fancy cars and bought cheaper cars. So, and I think they actually got divorced shortly after that. So, it probably affected them more than me, just because I was young enough to take the chance on it. I have a stable job for starting your own business, but I was 24 or 3 or something like that. So yeah, I had plenty of time to bounce back. So I don't remember
Sure.
like a catastrophic, terrifying moment. It was just kind of getting kicked in the stomach every day for 6 months, and then washed our hands with it.
Yeah, it's so for whatever reason I find um plane crashes fascinating. So I watch all sorts of videos around the circumstances under specific plane crashes. And there's a guy that runs a podcast, and he's a pilot, and he literally kind of walks you through the sequence of events that lead to plane crashes. And what he described, it's rare. It's very rare for a catastrophic event to cause a plane crash. It happens, but it's very rare. More often than not, the way he describes it is if you have Swiss cheese every once in a while, if you look straight through the Swiss cheese, all the holes line up and you can see from one side to the other. And that's the way he kind of describes plane crashes. So, like, there's a series of events, one after the other, that at first it doesn't seem like it's a huge deal. And then the next event happens, then the next event happens, the next event happens. And all of a sudden you look up and you're like, well, I'm screwed. Like I can't I can't make it out of this. And
Yep,
yeah, look,
yep,
I've been in that situation with businesses. I've had a business go under. And so I know exactly how that is. You keep taking steps, you keep taking actions, you keep trying to do things to generate revenue, to cut costs, and see if you can get, I call it raising the bridge and lowering the water, right? So raising the bridge is revenue, lowering the water is expenses. I know the floods come. How high can I make the bridge? How low can I get the water before the flood hits? Sometimes you make it, sometimes you don't. And yeah, it sucks. It's not a lot of fun when it happens.
yeah, yeah. That's a good analogy. Sometimes it's a 6 foot wave, and you can, pull your pants up and keep your keep your shirt dry, and other times it's a tsunami and it's going to take you out no matter how big of a moat you put in.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
always
like
I reflect on.
due for this
Sorry, go ahead.
we were due for the tsunami to hit us, so that was there was no stopping that tsunami.
Yeah, even in those situations, I always try to reflect and say, hey, I don't think, I think regardless of what I did, this was going to end the way it ended. But I always look back and say, what could I have seen, or should I have seen, or could I have, or should have done different, just so that I'm prepared if I wind up in similar circumstances somewhere down the road. I think that reflection is important, even if the penultimate reasons for the failure are out of your completely out of your control, which clearly they were in your situation, because you're in an industry where it's disposable income. Like nobody's, I shouldn't say nobody. It's very rare for your primary income to be generated from motorcycle racing, right? But it's rare for the bottom to fall out of the entire thing too. So, like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, at our level, nobody that's riding was making money. Like we were finding riders that we could sponsor, with a discount on parts and service. Um, Maybe one of the races would have a $500 prize or something if you won the series, but there was, we weren't at the level of high dollar sponsored riders, and even if we were, we would have been the ones paying the riders, so that wouldn't have been helping us any at that point. So yeah, it's a very expensive hobby.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most expensive hobby, especially for a kid. If you've got a 14-year-old, and we had one client actually had twin boys who raced, and they each had like three dirt bikes. So, that's six dirt bikes and the truck and the trailer and et cetera, et cetera. Doing a one or two tires for each bike every weekend. Like the motors last 12 hours. Like that's very expensive. Um, and that was our biggest client. And they actually had a ski out house in Park City. Um, and they put it on the market for 10 million at that point because they were bleeding cash. Uh, so yeah, high rollers, but they couldn't stay afloat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. So when the dust settled, like, what'd you do?
So at the same time, as I knew the end was near, I started looking at options of, what else I could do. Um, couldn't go back to school because I'd spent my school money on the motorcycle industry. Um, and there was, Arizona had so many dealerships. There was enough staying afloat where I probably could have like took a pay cut and
Oh, Brent,
and
you froze up on my end. The last thing I heard from you was there was enough dealerships that you probably could have took a pay cut, and then like you froze up for about 20 seconds.
okay, yeah, sorry about that.
Nope, it's all good.
Yeah, I could have found a job at another dealership, um, probably, and it would have been a pay cut, and then I had already sort of done that routine of working for somebody else, and then wanted to do it on my own, so I didn't want to go back to that. Um, so at the same time, my cousin, who's the same age as me, we were really close growing up. Um, he had became a sheriff deputy in the county where we were raised. Um, and him and his brother were both sheriff deputies. Um, so I had done a couple ride-alongs with him. We had grown up together, getting into mischief. So we were real close and did some, ride-alongs with him, and uh, thought this is a pretty exciting thing to do. So I started looking at, law enforcement jobs, um, sort of in the different counties and towns in the area. Um, and it's a government job. Uh, Benefits are guaranteed. So those were, they were getting a ton of applications at that time. Everyone who's losing their job is looking for that kind of job. So um, I ended up applying to a few places, but got interviews at the department where my two cousins worked. Um, and I'm sure that helped. My Our older cousin used to be the mayor of the town. Like I said, small town. So uh, when people saw my last name on the application or the resume, whatever, they had an opinion one way or the other. So that definitely played in my favor, but ended up getting a job as a detention officer at the sheriff's office where I grew up. Um, so not a patrol deputy, but basically a prison guard for the county jail, Pinal County. So that would have been like 2000, summer of 2008, I believe. I got a job there. So sort of like the trough of the housing crisis, but yeah,
Hmm.
got a job there. Making $23 an hour, whatever it was, which was like the highest paying correctional facility in the area. So yeah, I was pretty happy to land that pretty quick. Like I said, it was a competitive process. There was a lot of people applying. Um, and in Florence, where I grew up, there's maybe 5 to 7,000 people who lived in the town, but then there was 15,000 people in the prisons that are also in the town. So the population is just all prisoners, and that's like the biggest, employer was the state prisons, private prisons, um, and then the county jail where I worked was like the highest level of all the stuff in that little area. So pretty happy to land that job pretty quick.
So then most of the people that would have been incarcerated there were not residents, or were they residents?
So it's it was the whole county. And the town I lived in was a county seat, so we had the jail. But the bigger cities, like where Ashley grew up, that is in the same county. So
Hmm.
basically, like the south edge of Phoenix, basically anything between Phoenix and Tucson fell into this area. So if you look at a map, like right in the middle of Phoenix and Tucson, that's sort of where it was. And they did a one of those like 90 days in or 60 days something, but one of those like jail reality shows.
Yeah.
They did a season based on this jail. And after I left with some of the people I used to work with. Um, so you can see pictures of it there. Uh, but yeah, we were unique. We also had back in the back then it was less controversial. We had contracts with ICE to hold detainees from ICE and U.S. Marshals in the jail. So we had about 2,000 inmates in the facility.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just curious. It sounds like a pretty big facility. I was wondering if because you grew up there, did you ever have to oversee people you grew up with?
Yeah, yeah. Had a one friend from high school. Had another cousin came through and said hi. Uh, my business partner from the motorcycle shop came through one point. Um, People that Ashley went to school with, uh, and ended up on the wrong side of it. Uh,
Yeah.
and then, you have your name on your shirt, so people would be like, "Oh, they'd see the name, and maybe they got arrested by one of my cousins and stuff, and yeah, some family friends, but uh, yeah, nothing ever weird happened from that. It was just you just keep your distance and say hi and pretend that you don't know them.
Sure. No, yeah, I totally got it. Totally got it. Yeah, let's both just pretend we don't know each other, and that's I think the best way to handle this situation.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't do anybody any good to pretend otherwise. So, um, but yeah, so that was a very big change of pace to go from having my own business to basically going to jail every day. So I think I worked there 3 years, just about. Um, and I think I did the math. It was basically like 6 months of incarceration time. If you added every shift up, it would have been six to 8 months that I spent, behind bars. So, um, and I still, I had a lot of stories and, you know, worked with some good people. Um, but I sometimes still have nightmares that I had to go back to work there again. And I'm like walking down the hallway to go back to a 10-hour shift of sitting in jail. So, uh, yeah, nothing but respect to the people who still do the job. Uh, Encourage everyone to avoid going to jail because it's not fun. But yeah, that's not a job I would go back to if I had to.
Not the most exciting place in the world, I would imagine.
I would always say that 99% of the time we're vastly overpaid, and 1% of the time we're massively underpaid.
Right.
Because when that 1% things happen, you're not getting paid enough to deal with whatever's happening. But most of the time, it's pretty laid back. And it depends on what shift you work. I work swing shift, so like 1 in the afternoon to 8 o'clock at night. So they're awake and fired up the whole time. If you work morning or graveyard shift, it's they're sleeping half the time or all the time. So uh, it's different environments, but uh, you know at that point, I'm starting law enforcement, sort of entry level job. Like uh, everyone wants to move up to either, get promoted, get stripes, or to go to the road and become a police officer or a deputy. So that's sort of that's the path. Like as soon as you get a job, what I've always done is now you're looking for the next job or what are you going to do
Yep.
next? So when I was working at the dealership, motorcycle dealership, at the bottom, I was looking to, okay, I want to be a mechanic. I want a big toolbox. I want a lift. I want to get paid flat rate based on how much I can pump out. Did that for a while, and then it's like, well, now I'd kind of rather have my own business and do that. So then I did that, and then take the next step, and now I'm, doing law enforcement, starting at the bottom, and you want to, work your way up. So um, I had still had my eyes set on becoming a patrol deputy. Um, so I spent, like I said, 3 years at the jail. I had applied to become a patrol deputy twice. And the first time I made it partway through the process, didn't get selected. Um, and then applied again. And if I remember correctly, there was like 3,000 people applied. They picked like 100 people to do this like sort of like combine fitness written test. And then from there, they pick like 20 people to start interviewing, and then they hired five out of that. And I don't know how many people had applied the first time. So I got basically selected to um, sort of transition department. So I went from the jail side to the patrol side. So yeah, I was pretty narrow selection process for that, for competitive process. Um, and how it worked was basically quit the jail and then started on the basically the next building over. And then we had like 6 weeks before we went to an academy. And we used the same academy that the Arizona Highway Patrol uses. They run this academy out of South Mountain in Phoenix. So it was a 18-week academy. You live in a hotel and you drive to the academy every morning. And first day, you, you know, they're in the parking lot with their highway patrol hats pulled down over their eyes and yelling and pointing and making everyone line up and count stuff and stumble around and drop stuff. And uh, so it was they tried their best to do the boot camp experience to give you that stress inoculation and try to get people to quit. And they just they're pit bulls looking for weakness, and if they see someone waver a little bit or uh you know have an attitude or something they don't like, they're all over you and trying to get people to quit. So that was the start of that next, like, I don't know, are we on job number four, 3 or 4? So that's like sort of the next, that was the start of the next sort of path for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can kind of see in that role if you're going to be out in literally life or death situations, you do need people that can keep their composure under stressful situations. You do need people that can kind of navigate uh, intense interpersonal interactions with people. So there's probably some validity to it. And there's probably some what I call small pecker syndrome part of it as well. Like, I got picked on in high school and now it's my turn to give it back to somebody. I'm in charge and you got to listen to me
Yeah.
because I got this. There's a percentage of people attracted to that job because of that. I would argue that the vast majority of people are attracted to that job because they like the stability of the work. They want to help. They do want to protect and serve and keep society safe. And unfortunately, that small version gets publicized a lot more than the vast majority of people who do that work every day because they're out there in really tough situations doing really good work.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the age-old question of does the job turn you into an a-hole or does it attract a-holes? Um, and I don't
Right.
think it's that. I think it's you have to have a aggressive personality type because the job, nothing but respect to the people who do the job sucks. There it's 120 degrees. You're working a 10 or 12-hour day. Uh, Person after person is lying to you. You're dealing with, no one calls the police because it's their birthday and they have cake for you. They're calling because it's the worst day of their life and, and they need
Right.
something or so it's a rough job for sure. Um, and you have to be prepared. And what helped me was I wouldn't have passed the interviews and the questions. Like you do an oral board interview where you sit in front of five people and they ask you these questions. I wouldn't have passed going from the motorcycle dealership directly to like trying to be a patrol officer. I wouldn't have answered the questions good enough. But having the experience of working at the jail, I had used use of force. We had to use force with people before. I'd been in like any sort of incident, life, not necessarily life or death, but high situations. Like I had been in those, a little bit of experience that I could build. And even though it wasn't like you're on a traffic stop and this hypothetical thing happens, it's well, I was in the jail here, and this very similar hypothetical thing actually did happen, and here's how I handled it. So there's always a way to use something you've done in the past to answer these interview questions and to move yourself up. And that's something I've done multiple times of kind of you kind of know what they want to hear, and you probably have something in your life that you can use to build on it for these situations and scenarios and questions. Um, Mentally will help you, perform and uh, sort of outshine the peers who are just thinking about these situations for the first time. So um, I feel like I did a lot of homework on how to answer questions, how to present yourself, how to think properly, and that's what the police academy was doing at the next step is teaching you how to think, how to stand, how to mentally prepare yourself. Yeah, and if you can't stand the police officer yelling at you in the parking lot, you're not going to survive the gang member, you know, fighting you under the side of your car on a traffic stop. So, uh,
Right. Yep.
yeah, high, definitely a high stakes situation.
Yeah, and you're right. Being able to draw parallels from your real world experiences to professional situations is super helpful. I played sport. I went to college on a baseball scholarship. I played sports pretty competitively for most of my young adult life. And there's a lot of analogies. Like I was a pitcher, and so I played in front of thousands of people sometimes. And when you throw a pitch and somebody hits it out of the yard, that's a real world example of you didn't do a good job. Everyone knows it. Everyone saw it. There's no hiding from it. You got a bunch of people screaming at you. all the people you work with are disappointed, and they give you another ball, and you got about 30 seconds to compose yourself, and it's time to go again because there's another guy coming up to the plate. So you don't have time to feel sorry for yourself. You better learn your lesson because you don't want the next guy to do what the last guy did, or you're going to get taken out of the game real quick. And if you don't make the adjustment, they'll take you out of the game real quick. And so when you can demonstrate that you've operated, that's much less high stakes than what you're describing in terms of like literally fighting for your life on the side of the road. But, it's a stressful situation that most people don't find themselves in. So when you're able to articulate that in a meaningful way, it gives people the confidence that, hey, you've been in some stressful situations. You've learned to compose yourself. You've learned emotional control. You've learned thought processes to cope with failure. Uh, we have confidence that you'd be able to demonstrate those same skills in a professional setting. So, um, it's one of the things we talk about on the podcast a lot is there's only one way to develop confidence, and it's through repetition. And the problem with repetition is usually you're repeating something because you didn't get it right the first time. So it's try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, try, succeed. Most people will quit at the second fail and go, oh, I'm just not good at this. Well, maybe you're just not good at it now. Maybe you need to give a little time, and maybe you need to have some perseverance and push through it. It's one of the things I appreciated about your story when you were kind of walking me through it the first time we talked is that you don't let bad things stop you from moving forward. You might have to take a different path. You've already talked about that a couple of times. You might have to go a different direction, but you're going to keep working towards something that works for you. So, yeah, I think that's awesome. So you go through the initiation process. What was the police academy like when you went there?
Well, it sucked. Um, yeah. It, so uh, I have two excuses for why I didn't make it through. Um, and in hindsight, I probably could have started working harder earlier to be in better shape. But shortly before I had gone to the academy, I had gotten pneumonia, and then I had gotten asthma from the pneumonia. So I was
Mm,
fighting this asthma, like became like an exercise induced asthma, and it would also flare up in the middle of the night where I would wake up like just you got the air knocked out of you. Like I would
yep.
just wake up like no air. Um, and then I would have those like attacks as we were running. And of course there was two academies in Arizona. One was a called itself a fighting academy and one was a running academy. So I was in the running academy. So I was at a running academy with asthma, and the the day that I found out that I was gonna go to the academy, I was like, all right, I got to start running. So got up in the morning, went to the farm, and I had uh, my two dogs, uh, boxer and a border collie. We're gonna run around the field about a mile and a half, make it 200 yards, and the boxer passes me, cuts in front of me, and stops. And I smash into him, flip over him, and sprain my ankle really bad. So day one of training, 4 minutes in, sprained my ankle real bad. And it's still, I'll just be walking still, and I'll just take a step, and it just gives out, and I almost fall. So I've never quite recovered. So my excuses are I went to the academy with asthma and a bad ankle and a running academy in the foothills of a mountain. So it wasn't, running around the track, it was running rocky trails. So um, while I was there, I had the ankle injury flared up, and then with the asthma, I just wasn't in the shape I should have been. So I started to struggle on some of the longer runs, and then there was one day we were earning our class flag, and we had to race like quarter mile relay races against a higher class, and I went all out, held my own on this quarter mile drag race, but I ended up collapsing in the locker room, going to the hospital. Got like 6 IV bags, and I had rhabdo, which is when your kidneys aren't flushing the muscle breakdown properly. Um, so because of that, and then and had to go to urgent care because the ankle had flared up again. So I ended up missing like 3 workouts, and you're only allowed to miss 4. or something. And they had told me, and at this point, I'm like 6 weeks into the 18 or 19 week academy. Um, they were starting to hone in on my weakness, uh, and I knew I wasn't going to make it through.
Sure.
Um, and I could have washed out and then gone. Then it's up to the sheriff's office, to determine, do they put you in the next class? Do you like go work in dispatch and answer the phone? I guess no, dispatch is more complicated than that. Work in like records or something. Um, and basically, I decided to drop out of the academy. And I remember the night I decided to do it. Um, we were staying at a hotel, and I had a roommate who was, in my class. We were staying together in the room. I told him, hey, tomorrow let's drive our own cars, just in case. So I took my own car, and while this was happening, Ashley was, we were living together in in Florence, where I had that, which is northern Arizona by the Grand Canyon. Beautiful mountains, uh, you know, 80 degrees in the summer, snow in the winter, and I'm down there in Florence, which is 125 degrees. So she's getting ready to move up there to go to university, get her master's degree. And we were planning on doing like a long-term thing and or a long distance thing. And so I had an out, I guess, at that point, and I decided, I'm gonna go with her to Flagstaff and do something else because I'm not gonna make it through this academy, and I'm gonna, you know, I could try to wash back through. And the week before I had dropped out of the academy, I had a thought of like, if I don't make it through this, I'm not doing it again.
Mm.
Like the the because what happens is, you have you're in the classroom, you have different instructors come in and teach different things, and some of the instructors who were, detectives in other departments, they would joke around like, "Oh, I see your class schedule has a 3 hour block in the afternoon. Uh, I wonder what's going to happen then." And sure enough, when that block hits, the lead instructor comes in with a stack of papers and throws them on the ground and says, "This is crap. Everybody, locker room, gym close, outside 5 minutes, and then you spend the next 3 hours getting smoked outside." So if we had played that game enough, where I decided, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this again. There was a girl in that same class from another department, and she had made it all the way to the last week and broke her foot and had to recycle, and she had to do the
Oh,
whole thing over again. Uh, and yeah, I didn't have it in me to do it again. Um, so, yeah, I decided to drop out. Um, and I remember getting in the car after I told the instructors I was going to drop, gathered up all my stuff, got in the car, rolled the windows down, cranked up the radio, drove back home, just smiling. You know, so I still remember that day and that drive home. So I guess I don't have any regrets from that. And when I went back to, the sheriff's office the next week and talked about what my options were, they said I could go back to the jail and work there. So transition back over. I told the command staff that I didn't, they didn't find it respectful to the job to be so excited to leave and then come back and it'd be a runner-up decision. So I decided I'm gonna take my chances and go do something else. So ended up going up to Flagstaff with Ashley. That's we had been dating for probably a year and a half at that point or something, and living together for a little less than a year. But yeah, then we moved in together in Flagstaff, Northern Arizona. So now I'm
nice. Well, I mean,
unemployed.
right? But I mean, it sounds like the universe was trying to tell you, hey, you're not supposed to be a cop. Like there was a series of events that kind of portended, hey, this isn't for you, and you listened, And so you wind up in Flagstaff with Ashley and you're unemployed with no prospects. Sounds like an awesome place to be.
Yep, yep. And then there was a big motorcycle dealership in the town. I applied there and got hired right away. So, before we were completely unpacked, I was already had picked up the job and was working there. Um, so yeah, so back to motorcycles. And this time I'm working behind the counter in the parts department, selling parts and helmets and accessories, and I'm not in the back getting dirty. Um, so that was something I wanted to do. I didn't want to try to be a mechanic again, and those are skills you have to keep honed. Um, and I want to do something a little bit easier, cleaner. Uh, and they were happened to be hiring for that part or for that position anyways. So yeah, that just worked out perfect. It was like basically a salary slash commission role, selling parts and accessories at a dealership.
Yeah, so at least you're generating some income. And I mean, for what it's worth,
Yeah,
if you guys don't know this yet, I know the end of the story. Brent is not in motorcycles and or automotive anymore. So as you're working there, like what's your next step? How did you make the transition out of that into the data slash financial world?
yeah. Um, so we were in Flagstaff working at this. I was working at the dealership. Ashley was getting her bachelor's degree, which she got two bachelors, and then she had to decide what she was going to do, and she decided to go to grad school, which was down, halfway back where we had came from in northern Phoenix, Midwestern University. She got a slot there to get her doctorate in psychology. So I followed her back down the mountain. We moved into northern Phoenix, Glendale area, and she was working sorry, she was going to school. I think that was a 2-year program or 3-year program. And then I got a job at another dealership in town, motorcycle dealership, through people that I had known from the Flagstaff dealership. I knew this representative, got me an interview. And so I basically got a job in Glendale at a dealership doing the same thing. Um, and that was just, at this point, I've been back in the motorcycle game for a while, getting fed up with just that game, wanting to change the pace, and I didn't still didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. At this point, I'm 20 something. I probably considered a grown up at that point, but didn't feel like it. But when I had worked at the jail, I would get home at like 9, 10 o'clock at night, and that was like my 5 in the afternoon. So just watching a lot of late night TV. I started watching the World Series of Poker on ESPN2 and got interested in poker. And I'm not a big sports fan, but poker's always been interesting to me since I kind of figured it out back then. Um, and a lot of the high stakes poker players were hedge fund managers, day traders. I didn't know what any of that was. I was god awful in math in high school. And even though I knew I thought I wanted to work with computers, uh, I was like really struggling with math. So I I never had an interest in finance because we have to take math classes to do finance. So I figured that was a disqualifier for me. I just wouldn't be able to figure it out. So so when I'm trying to think of, what do I do next? I start looking at, okay, what is a stockbroker? What is a hedge fund? What is a day trader? Like, what are these things? Um, and stockbroker seemed interesting. Um, I didn't want to like work at a bank, but I thought something in finance would be interesting. So Charles Schwab has one of their big call centers in that area. Um, it was about 20 minutes from where we were living, and they had this opening for like a registered representative. It's basically like an entry level free stockbroker position. You would get hired there, and then they would train you to take the Series 7 exam to become a stockbroker. So I went on, I think it was on opendoor.com, looked up all the interview questions for Charles Schwab, everything they would ask, wrote them all the interview questions on postcards. And I started using my motorcycle, my small business, my law enforcement expertise to come up with like unique ways to answer these questions. And I had all these postcards with the questions and answers, and I would study them, printed off all the Charles Schwab's motto and their business goals, and all the stupid stuff on the about me kind of section of their website. Could really like figure out who they are and what they do, and um, so I applied for the job, did a couple interviews, and I remember being in person at the office in the interview and not really knowing what the job was still. Um, and they were talking about like working as a team and would you like, but also answering the phone. And I didn't know, it's like, are we all on the phone or is one person on the phone, or like, am I helping the one person on the phone and I'm not on the phone? Like, I didn't even know what the job was. Basically, the job is if somebody calls the Schwab hotline, I'm the one who answers, and it's maybe it's how much money do I have, or how much, where's my statement, what's my password, or you know, I want to buy or sell stock or a mutual fund or whatever. So that's what the job was. And it was sitting on in a call center basically on in a small team, answering the phone. And like I said, you start off unlicensed. So if somebody asks like, I want to buy shares of Apple, like, oh, I can't help you with that. Let me get you to the licensed person who can help you. Um, and then we start to. I think we did that job where you answer the phone for a couple months, and then they actually have a great program to train you. You spend like 4 weeks in a classroom studying to take the Series 7 exam, which is like a 6.5 hour exam. Uh, I think I think average like 60% of people pass it. Charles Schwab has such a good program. They had like 82% of the people that went through this program
Mm.
pass it on the first try. Um, but yeah, so got a job, um, figured out what the job actually was after I started, and then got the got the Series 7. So at that point, I could call myself a stockbroker, um, just like Jordan Belfort from Wolf of Wall Street. Exactly the same.
Hopefully that was not your role model.
No, no, that movie hadn't came out yet. Although his book was out at that point. And everything that he did in that movie, changed the way the job actually was. So, we didn't earn commissions. You were given performance bonuses on customer service and uh, accuracy, not on, selling garbage to garbage men, which I think is how he put it in the movie. So, very, very different
Right.
from that movie. But yeah, it's um, once I'd gotten licensed, then you're sort of like not entry level, but one step from entry level, and you've got this certification where I could have left Charles Schwab and gone to Morgan Stanley or J.P. Morgan or Edward Jones or some of these other wirehouses and gotten a job. So just like how the motorcycle certifications let me go from Mesa to Castor Grande to Flagstaff to Glendale. Um, now I've got this other thing where I can go, anywhere in the country and get a job with a firm. Um, so it so then, the question is, are you happy with your job, or do you want to try to like figure out the next step? So I just kept working my way up. Got basically another license that was a supervisory one, let you supervise the people that had my license, and then you could do training and basically train the people to get the license and supervise them while they're working. Um, which they let you get that and they don't pay you more. So that was good for them, bad for me. Um, and then the next certification I got was the Series 66, which is the basically the registered investment advisor license that lets you give advice. Um, And at that point, Charles Schwab wouldn't actually let me give people advice, but they let me get the license to make me more valuable. And I'm sure most industries are like this, but the best way to get a pay increase is to quit your job and get another job.
Right.
So to their credit, they wouldn't give a lot of promotions and raises, but they would give you certifications to let you make more money elsewhere. So I was always, as soon as I started, I was always studying for the next exam, license, certification, whatever. So I always had these big, stupid finance books of Investment Advisor Act of 1940 something and all these things that you're studying and none of these I should say none of these like licenses mean that you're good at your job or you're good at investing or anything. It just means you've met the state and federal government's minimum requirements to have something next to your name. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm an expert because I have these things. It's just things you have to get to work in the industry.
You know what they call the person that graduates last in their class of medical school, right?
Doctor.
That's right. Exactly.
Yep.
My I have three sisters, and I was talking to them one time, and I've always been good at math. I love math, right, wrong, or indifferent. And I said, like, just math would tell you that half of doctors are below average. Like, by definition, that's a correct statement every single time you make it. And they freaked out. What do you have against doctors? Why are you so against doctors? I said, I'm not against doctors at all. It's just a statement of fact. There's a reason they call it a practice, and half of them are below average. I'm just saying you should ask questions. You shouldn't just take someone's word of gospel because they have a degree or a piece of paper that says, like Brent just said, I pass the minimum requirements for me to have this piece of paper. They might be a genius. They might be the best doctor ever. I don't know. They might be the worst doctor ever. I don't know. That's my whole point. So I appreciate your comments because I'm the same way. I have a degree in finance. You know what that qualifies me for? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Other than I showed up and I turned in my homework and I passed the minimum requirements by which they would give me a little sheepskin that says Joe's officially really smart in economics. Like that's literally all it means. It doesn't mean a hill of beans in the real world. The real world is a different place, and you've got to cut your teeth and generate your bona fides on your own through results in our market. So, um, yeah, but I love the fact that you're always working towards something. I think there's a valuable lesson there for the audience to learn. So, you've gone now from a guy who in high school said, I have no idea what I want to do. You say now you still aren't sure that this is what you want to do forever and ever, but you've continued to take your chances and your shots and put yourself in positions where you can try new things, experience new things, and continue to grow your career because you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to ask questions. You're willing to take on things that you don't know, that you're not a subject matter expert in, but you're willing to figure it out. And I think there's so much value in that approach. I think I just want to make sure I call that out for our audience that just think about what Brent has done at this point, right? So goes to college, doesn't like college, bad place for me. Then he goes to trade school. That works out okay. Then he works at a dealership. Then he goes out on his own. He goes out on his own. It's going okay. Gets the rug pulled out from under him through forces completely out of his control. Then he winds up going through trying to get into law enforcement and winds up as a prison guard essentially because of family connections. Follows that to go into law enforcement and realizes, hey, this sucks. I'm not doing this. What does he have now? He's got a relationship with someone that he cares about, and she's working really hard at the same time on a different path. So he goes with her and he gets a job back in the automotive industry, in the motorcycle industry. Says, you know what? I don't want to do this full time. Starts looking around at other things and starts climbing the ladder there. What do you notice? Action, action, action. Action will lead you to better places. And I think it's so important. It's why we talk about it on this podcast all the time. When we see successful people, they take action. Sometimes things go well, sometimes they go terrible, but they keep taking action. So there's the point I wanted to make for our audience. I really appreciate the approach that you've taken to get to this point. So What do you do next? Like now you've been able to get all these certifications, which qualifies you to offer products and or have conversations with people. Because look, like they'll throw you in jail if you don't have these qualifications. You give people financial advice or you try to sell them securities. That's how people wind up in federal prison, by the way. But you're licensed now to do all this stuff. What do you do with that?
Yeah, so going back just slightly, we're in Glendale, Phoenix, working at Charles Schwab. Ashley gets to the point in her internship where we move to our. She's at the point in her degree where she has to do her internship. So we end up moving to Reno, and I stay with Charles Schwab, but I start working at a branch. Instead of a call center, it's a branch where you can walk in. It's meet with your advisor. And I'm sort of working the front desk, in that area. So that's where I get the first taste of like working with clients in person, in an office, wearing a suit and a tie, and get a little bit of taste of the job. Then we moved back to Arizona, and just like I had those nightmares of working in the jail again, I had the same nightmares of working in the call center in Glendale again. So we actually, I, resigned from Charles Schwab, and you got 2 years basically for your certifications to stay in limbo, where you have to, renew them with another firm. So you have to be sponsored by a firm or whatever. So I had a couple years, and if you did a couple things, took a side venture as running a corn maze on the family farm for a little bit. Ended up back in Flagstaff, and I got a job with uh, with JP Morgan Chase as a private client banker. So it was a licensed position, um, but so I kept my certifications, um, and my start date was March of 2020. And if you think of the timing of my motorcycle job, this is another stellar time to start a new job. So I'd actually I was supposed to start on a Monday, and like the Saturday or Sunday before I started, they sent an email out, big capital letters, if you are sick, do not come to work. Um, and I had been sick. I didn't realize, why I was sick at the time, but ended up, starting there. Um, and that job just didn't develop. So many things were changing in the world at that time. Um, we were supposed to be at this one bank, and they had closed two of the three banks in town to consolidate everything and do the drive-through only for a little bit. So it was a weird situation. You had corporate watching through cameras to make sure employees aren't getting within 6 feet of each other, and all these crazy things. Um, and they had all these like milestones of like how my career was starting to progress. I was coming in at a higher level position, and because of what was going on in the world at the time, everything was just stagnant, stalled out. Um, so I started looking, at other jobs in town, and when I had applied to Chase, I had applied to this other firm, WT Wealth Management, who I work for now. I had applied, but they didn't really have an opening that would suit me at the time. Um, so after I don't know, it must have been August of 2020. So I had been at Chase for like 5 months. And WT Wealth Management calls me and said, "Hey, we have your application. I think we're ready to like create this position that you might be a good fit for." So I interviewed with them, and they were like a kind of a hybrid company. We had office here, another town 2 hours away had another office. Everyone kind of worked remote most of the time, anyways. So they were well suited for what was going on. Um, and Yeah, they basically created a position for me. Um, Basically, the idea was they are a company that has clients. We manage their money as a registered investment advisor. We have you know, the firm has advisors that work for the firm, and then those advisors have a book of business of clients that they manage. investments and retirements accounts for. And my role was I'm going to maximize the technology, the computers, the uh, trading platforms, the what the custodians offer, and make sure we're getting the most out of the technology. Make sure we're training the advisors with you know risk management software and compliance sort of stuff. So it's sort of a new position with this small firm, and this firm kind of came to be from an entrepreneur who started buying other small books of business and putting them together and sort of building a business. So I think I was the at the time I was the fourth employee that the firm had, and there was other contractors who were advisors, but I was a fourth employee for this firm. Um, and the one downside is since we weren't a broker dealer, we were a registered investment advisor. I lost my Series 7, so no longer a stockbroker, so no longer the Wolf of Wall Street.
Well, so you're talking about someone aggregating these businesses. The advantage there are the fees, right? I mean, you typically work on a percentage basis of assets under management. And so the bigger you can build your book, the more income you're bringing in because it's typically assets under management. And then in certain cases, some share of gains as well. Would you mind talking a little about that for those in our audience that aren't familiar with how that structure, that payment structure works for
Yeah,
many firms?
yeah. So the latter version, which we don't do, sometimes it's called the 10 and 2 or the 20 and 2, which is a hedge fund pay structure where you take 2% of the assets plus like the first 10% of profit or 20% of profit. Um, so if you're getting paid either way, and then if the fund makes money, you're taking a piece of that profit as well. We don't do that. We are just a percentage of assets under management. So um, if you've got X amount of money at the end of the, every quarter, a little bit comes off the top. That's our fee for the services we provide. Um, and this is, we work with everybody from, business owners to employees of small businesses to government employees, entrepreneurs, anyone who has investments or wants to be invested to reach certain goals, whether that's retirement, whether that's saving for a house, whether that's managing proceeds from a recent house sale to buy another house, whatever it may be, we we manage that money for you for a fee. So that's basically the structure of the business and the way that the owner of the company, quickly realized was it's it's hard for one person to go out and meet a client and sign them and get that book of business. And if you're doing that through advertising, it costs a lot of dollars in advertising and marketing to get clients. I can't remember what the actual like, you know, how many, what multiple of dollars earned you have to spend, upfront in advertising. It's a high multiple, so getting the client the first time is difficult. So what he would try to do is if there's an advisor who is thinking about retiring, we'll buy them out and we bring that client or bring that advisor to our firm. He brings his clients. We introduce ourselves to the clients. We show them how we invest and create this partnership where we absorb the new advisor's book of business and they can retire or stay with us. And then that was a much more cost effective way to grow the company, as opposed to just starting buying TV commercials and radio advertisements and trying to build it organically. So that was where some of my colleagues came from was the acquisition of a previous firm to this firm, and um, it's a pretty common way for that type of industry to grow.
Yeah, I just I wanted the the audience to understand that a little bit better. Like, what's the benefit of going out and buying these investment houses? Like, why would you do that? So the more like the way to think about investments, at least the way I try to explain investments, and you do this for a living, but you're essentially purchasing a stream of cash flows at a discounted rate. That's all you're trying to do is you project out cash flows and you say, I think it's going to throw off this much cash over the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. And then you say, if I earn 8%, but I pay 3%, I keep the difference and I make money. I mean, this is what Warren Buffett is famous for. Warren Buffett always says, I want to find something that's worth $1, but I want to pay 40 cents for it. And he's been pretty good at that over about 70 years. And it's made him a multi billionaire. But it's not more
Yeah.
complicated than that. The process by which you do it and all the information that's out there can be very confusing, but at its core, that's all you're doing in investing is you're purchasing a stream of cash flows and you're trying to estimate what those cash flows are going to be over a period of time and pay less than that for it and you make money. So there you go.
Yeah. And if you think of why that business model is effective, it's, think about the daunting task of, so say you as a person, you had this job, you quit, moved to another job, you've got this 401k with this other firm and it's floating out there. You need to do something with it, but you just haven't done it. And every 3 months you get a statement from them and you're like, man, I should do something with this 401k sitting there. I don't even know the access, email to log in to see it. Uh, then 3 months later, you think about it again. And so the amount of time it takes from someone to finally get so fed up with themselves that they haven't done anything with it yet to to accept the the service that we're trying to offer, it takes a lot. So getting that person to like come to you the first time is difficult. And that's where all the labor is in the job is getting the person to like open themselves up for the service that we offer. And if you can find a book of 200 people who have already taken that first step with someone that they trust and have been happy with, and you can absorb that business, um, that's exactly why we were operating that way, and continue to do so. It's because it's so hard to get people to do what they should do of, asking for help and getting the help when they need it. Um, you know, just like the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago or today. Um,
Yeah,
and I know that,
exactly.
and I didn't plant a tree yesterday, and I didn't plant one today, so I'm putting it off too. And that's how most people are. It's something like this. It's not always fun. It's paperwork and DocuSign and so yeah, it's hard to get people to actually take the take the first step and ask for help, even if they know they need it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like getting people to go to the doctor, right? I mean, you got to go to the doctor because you got something wrong with your elbow or your head hurts or whatever it is. You haven't been able to figure it out on your own. It's getting worse, not better. But if I just do this, or I just take this echinacea, or I just do X, I read this on the internet. It's got to be true. And the reality is, there's again, I said half of all doctors are below average. That means half of all doctors are above average. And you want to find one of the good ones to help you with whatever your health problems are. It's the same thing with financial advice. Are there a lot of kind of slimy people that don't know what they're doing? Sure. Are there a lot of really good people that know exactly what they're doing, can help you? You bet there are. And those are the ones you want to align yourself, and those are the ones you want to work with. So, yeah, but I mean, to me, the most interesting thing about your model is that you and your wife actually offer services together to a lot of clients. Talk a little bit about how that came about and how you guys handle that.
Yeah. So my role with the WT Wealth Management I work for is a dual role. So one, I'm an employee, and that initial job they hired me for sort of transitioned, and now I work directly with our chief investment officer. I basically help him run all of our investment strategies and performance models. I'm the head trader for the firm, so all these sort of things I've I've well, since I started at Charles Schwab, I sort of picked all these like things that I liked and kind of carved away all the things I didn't like. So I don't answer 150 inbound calls a day. I get to like look at stocks and options and strategies and back testing and all this fun stuff. So I've sort of designed uh, this job to do the things that have interested me the most. So that's one part of the job. My other part is I'm a contractor. I'm an advisor, uh, registered investment advisor. I have my own book of business, and that's where Ashley comes in. You know, doctor of psychology. Um, you know, expert of understanding thinking and how people think and behavior. Um, and we started working together, content and working with people to focus on, not just like how your money's gonna work for you, but how, it's such a big component of it psychological. Um, it's the reason one of the biggest things that an advisor can do it. It's not necessarily beating the market substantially every year. It's keeping people from making bad decisions, which left to their own devices, people don't buy low and sell high. They buy high and sell low. When you
Right.
hear the Uber driver talking about his crypto portfolio, that's probably time to sell all your crypto, um, not to buy in. So, um, you know, the I have the sort of classic background in finance now of understanding, bull markets and bear markets and diversification and all these things. And Ashley has the knowledge of the psychology of, you know, knowing what to do when things are uncomfortable, how, how to make peace with the discomfort of seeing, your portfolio's red or it's too green and the thoughts of, am I going to be able to retire? Do I have to sell my house? Like people catastrophize these things and that leads to the worst decisions that you can make as a long-term investor of, selling at the bottom, um, things like that. So what we're doing together um, is sort of trying to cover both sides of the investments and the psychology that goes along with the investing. And we've been writing articles and putting out content on Instagram and stuff. Um, and we'll write newsletters to our existing clients and just taking current events and situations and just sharing kind of both sides of uh, of the psychology and the finance piece of everything.
Yeah, there's the business case, and then there's kind of the emotional aspect of investing your money, right? And both of those play a role. And you can make a really solid argument on the business case, but if you can't overcome the emotional part that most of us feel when it comes to money, right? I mean, it's always interesting to me the way people react to money because I've literally never cared about money. I like the freedom the money provides. So I like having a lot of money because it gives me a lot of freedom. But the money itself or the things you can purchase with it have zero interest to me. I do love the experiences you can have with it, like taking a trip or providing nice things for the people that you care about or those types of things. They mean a lot to me. And so for me, I should probably care more about money than I do. Because like it does matter. Like you got to pay the electric bill, you got to buy groceries, you got to keep the roof over your head. So there is some component of just money as utilitarian that's necessary. It's just never resonated much with me. And my wife's the opposite. My wife cares very much about money, not in a bad way, but in a very practical and intelligent way. And so like, we've been married for 30 plus years and it's our money. Like it's not my money or her money. It's our money and managing that balance is something we managed to do it a long time ago together, but it's very easy to get sideways, especially when you're talking about multiple people involved. So I just think it's such a unique model. I love the way you do that. How'd you come about? Like, how did you decide to approach it that way? Did you think, hey, it'd be great if I could talk this one knucklehead into doing something? Let me have him talk to the doc.
Um, I don't know exactly where we got the idea. If you look at, finance articles, books, and I'm also a, day trader or swing trader. Um, so I look at a lot of, trading resources. The psychology just comes up all the time. Um, and it's a hot opinion in the world of like day trading or, you know, very short term trading is, maybe it's 80% psychology and 20% strategy. And if you took, the same strategy, you know, two people could be have vastly different returns, and it's the psychology of how they handle winning and handle losing that um, you know dictates the outcome. And some people say it's maybe more strategy, but a lot of people really say it's all mental. And if you think of it as like a binary situation where you're fully invested in something that's either going to go to 100 or to zero, um, the you're either going to feel fear or greed. And what happens is when it starts to go up and you're making money, you're afraid that your profits are going to stop. You're going to lose those profits. So you close the position and you take a very small win. And I guess I should have said fear and hope, because when you're losing, not greed. So when you're winning, you're afraid you're going to lose your profits, so you close the position. And if you're losing, if it's going against you, you hope that it's going to turn around. So you keep holding it longer and longer and longer. You have a massive losing position, and then so your outcome is very small wins and big losses. Therefore, even if you had a good strategy, you lost money because you failed to avoid you know, the fight or flight sort of psychology that came into play. Um, and there's some good books that I've read, you know, sort of on that topic. But as I was trading my own accounts, I was talking to Ashley about, I feel this, I feel that situation. I feel that fear and that hope, and it's working against me trading. And she started, I was asking her as an expert in behavior and psychology, what are some things I can do you know, to mitigate that, or to perform better in that situation. And, and that's, me trading, but the same, if it's your retirement, that you've worked a lifetime to build, and you see that, it's you're losing money. And, if you're older in life and you've saved for a long time, it could be, huge amounts of money that you're seeing, kind of go up and down. Um, so that psychology, kind of extrapolate the small scenario that I was seeing, that can affect anyone. So the things that she was helping me with, kind of applied across the board. Um, so we decided, let's start kind of writing some stuff down and figuring out, you know, how to help more people with this, because it's a unique situation that we're in now to be able to have sort of both of the 80% mental and the 20% strategy. We kind of have both of those. So let's work together and come up with some cool ideas.
Yeah, that's the part that it's really smart when you stop and think about it, because so much of it is controlling your emotions so that you can make rational decisions. Because if you just remove the emotion from it, it's really not super challenging to make rational decisions. And it's been my experience that people that make a lot of money aren't necessarily just great at making money. A lot of it has to do with their constitution. A lot of it has to do with luck. Like, if you bought, let's say you went to college with Mark Zuckerberg and you bought Facebook stock because you happen to go to college with Mark Zuckerberg, you're going to look like a financial genius because it's, whatever, a million X wherever it wherever it started. You're not that smart. Or let's just say that you bought Enron stock because they've been lying to everyone for 20 years and it all goes in the tank. You're not stupid. Like they fooled really, really savvy people who do this for a living. So a lot of making money is participating in the process. And if you participate in the process in an intelligent way, you'll typically win more than you lose. It's like I've invested in a lot of real estate, and I'm not right now. I've sold off all the real estate that I owned at one point, but I would always explain to people, look, if you look at the US real estate market over the last 150 years, you can count on over a 150-year data set, which is a pretty large data set, an average of around 2.5% appreciation. So if you have enough time, you can make money in real estate. So like when the market tanked in 2008, it's funny because I think I didn't own very much at that point. I know I owned one property in Oregon and we had bought it and then we had mortgaged it and the market turned and we were on paper, we were underwater at that point. And I happened to have a partner on that project and he called me in a panic. He's like, we got to sell it. We got to sell it. We got to minimize the losses. I'm like, time out. Let me just explain the scenario here to you. We own a property that on paper is worth, I don't know, I think it was worth 90 grand at the time, and we had about 115 grand in mortgages on it. So we were underwater. We've got a tenant. We've owned the property for 8 or 9 years. We've literally had 3 months in 9 years where we did not have a paying tenant. So, like, this property is super easy to rent out. That tenant covers all of our costs. So we don't have to go out of pocket, or we're not making any money, but we're not losing money on the property. So your proposition is to sell it and make sure we lock in the loss that's on paper right now. That's what you want to do? It's like, well, when you say it that way, I'm like, that's the only way to say it, man. Like, this makes no sense at all. Why on earth would we sell this property? It makes no sense at all. So we didn't. We held on to it for another 15 years and we sold it for about $150,000 profit 15 years down the road, simply because we didn't panic and let Father Time do his thing and let the market bounce back and appreciate. But it's really easy. Like I understood where he was coming from. It sucked to look at your portfolio and go, super, sweet. I'm down 40 grand on that property. That's a great purchase at this point. Like it's not fun when that happens.
That's an advantage of real estate is, if you pull up your portfolio on your phone of your stock investments, as fast as you can refresh it, you're seeing losing money, losing money, losing money. No one's calling you 3 times a day telling you your house is going down in value. It's, maybe once a quarter you realize it, or, if you're smart enough to not look at, you know, Zillow or the listings, frequently you don't know that your house is worth less than it was a year ago. Um, but if Apple's worth less, then you're going to know it, every day, and it's on the TV and et cetera. So very liquid investments like stocks and bonds, you find out very fast, you know, and it feels like you're losing in real time, whereas real estate's a little bit slower to give you those data points. So it's like one of the advantages of real estate over for the psychology
Yeah.
over like stock investing.
Yeah. The other thing I will say is you are only up or down on paper as well. So, like at any point in time, you may think, hey, I'm worth X or I lost X. That's actually not true at all. On paper, you're worth X, or on paper, you've lost X, but none of that is real until a transaction takes place.
Yep.
And so, if you sell, then yeah, okay, you'd be worth that. Less taxes, less any early withdrawal fees, less any other ancillary items that go with the sale of those assets. Or you lock in the loss, and okay, yeah, then yes, at that point you've lost that money. But that's one of the things I encourage people is just say, let's just calm down a little bit. Let's think through this logically. And is there a reason that you need to sell this asset right now? Because I deal with I dealt with a lot of real estate investors. I did a little bit of syndicating, not a lot, but a little. And the lack of situational awareness and lack of emotional control was staggering to me in dealing with people who had a lot of money. Like it's not like they didn't have a lot of money, but they did not have a lot of emotional control. So I spent a lot of time acting as kind of, a coach and or an amateur therapist saying, whoa, let's let's slow this conversation down a little bit and talk facts instead of emotions. I think it's awesome what you guys have put together. Where do you see it going? Like, what do you guys have any concrete plans on where you take this partnership? I mean, you're married. I know where
Um,
that partnership's going.
yeah, um, we our goal is to just to continue to market and to meet with people, um, get referrals, and the goal is to build our book of business so we can work directly with more people, help more people. And that gives us the resources to continue to grow what we're doing. And we have a few things longer term that we're working on. We want to write a book together of psychology and finance. And we're also thinking about developing software. A big part of the job is, it's not about meeting a client and promising that you're going to make them, a certain amount of money. It's matter of fact, you can't do that. Um, what you can control is how much risk we're going to take to meet your goals, um, and how much, there's, for a certain amount of risk, you expect a certain amount of return. Um, so there's not always 100% alignment of the amount of risk you need to take correlating with how much risk you can tolerate. Some people, they need to take a certain amount of risk to make their, retirement goals, but they don't have the stomach for it. So um, we want to try to develop some software to come up with those two different numbers of the risk you can take, the risk that you need to take, and then understanding how to square those numbers off and be, you know, meet in the middle. And that's, an essential part of how to meet your goal. It's not just about buying tech stocks and closing your eyes. It's making sure you can survive the amount of time that you have set aside to invest, you know, your life savings or whatever this investment bucket is. It's managing that risk. So we want to try to develop some software that we can use with our clients or even license to other people to work with their clients to tie the goals and the financial goals and psychology together in in a piece of software, which we haven't written yet, but we've been outlining how that would. So that's one of the longer term goals.
Sure. Well, I mean, the funny part about, I shouldn't say funny. I don't know if that's probably not the right word, but the interesting part to me is the one piece of the equation that you never know the answer to is how long are you going to live? Because you can talk about retirement age and that's great, but if your retirement age is 65 and you keel over at 65 in 3 days, well shit, you don't need nothing. But if you live to 105 and you got 40 years on that horizon, that's a very different time horizon, and you just don't know what that number is. So like the best you can do is the best you can, and I always say it's better to prepare for a long stretch. And then if you're surprised the bad way, then you're surprised the bad way and you're a benefactor to the people that cared about you after you're gone. But yeah, the risk reward thing, I always find that conversation interesting because when I was younger, and I used to hear a lot of people say this, you need to take risks if you want a big reward. Well, that's not really true. If you let time and compound interest do its thing, you can do it pretty safe in many instances, so long as you're disciplined and you have a good strategy. You can mitigate a lot of that risk, which is what guys and gals like Brent do. For those that are managing a portfolio or thinking about, hey, I'm building, or I came into some money, or I'm not sure what to do with it. I'm unsophisticated. I'm not sure how any of this works. That's literally what folks like Brent do, and so they can kind of give you good advice and help you put a plan together that you're comfortable with. And then when you're uncomfortable, you can talk to his wife and she can help you feel more comfortable.
Yep. And that's right. And we don't invest in things that where the risk is it goes to zero. And a lot of people think that, y- you described it well of the the highest mark of the value of the account is like that's the number I have. And then anything that moves down from there is I lost $20,000. It's like you didn't really have that 20 at the top. It just, it ebbs and flows and it we're, hopefully the tides keep rising, but but so the risk in the way we encourage people is you wouldn't invest in things that could go to zero. We're not investing in cryptocurrencies or like meme coins or um, you know, structured products that can go to zero. It's, we're buying Apple and Microsoft and Google and Nvidia and any of these companies could be down 30%, you know, tomorrow, probably not tomorrow, but next week, they could be down 20, 30%. Things could happen. But if Apple, Microsoft, and Google go to zero, then your portfolio is not your biggest concern anymore. It's we're we're living in a cave at that point. So the risk isn't I'm going to lose everything. The risk is I didn't take my foot off the gas with a couple of years to spare, and now I'm in a downturn. If you were planning on retiring in 2009, you don't want to be fully invested in stocks in 2007 and 2008. You want to be tapering off before that. And you know, th- that's, financial planning, that's retirement planning, that's part of the thing that we do. But yeah, the risk is the risk is you don't give yourself enough time for the investments to play out and you sell too early. And now the volatility, which is the, price of admission to compounding returns, bites you, and then you sell at the bottom, and now it's a real loss.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, like this has gone on for time immemorial, right? I mean, I'm not a huge like Warren Buffett's demonstrated he's a very good investor. It's not like I follow Warren Buffett or live on every word he says. And there's some people that do. And like you could do a lot worse than listening to Warren Buffett. But one of my favorite sayings from Warren Buffett is when people are greedy, you should be fearful. And when people are fearful, you should be greedy. And like being contrarian is almost always a good place to be if you do it in a thoughtful way. Like you don't want to be contrarian on stupid stuff, but like when it comes to finances, contrarian, I don't know, man. There's a lot of arguments to be made that contrarian's pretty good in most instances.
Yeah, yeah, certainly being brave when others are fearful. Um, that's usually the best time to get into the market if you have money on the sidelines. The stock market is a perpetual money growing machine of if there's a thing called the Buffett indicator, and it looks at the valuations of stocks. And most of the time when the market's at an all-time high, the Buffett indicator is calling for a correction. And we've
Mm,
hit an all-time high in the market 30 times this year. So you know, it predicted 100 of the last five bear markets. Like so you, there's times where it can go against you if you sell too early.
sure.
But I mean that's such a nuanced thing. That's that's a hard game to play. More importantly than trying to pick tops and bottoms is just getting in the market you know as early as you can. And that's just like you said, when you don't know if you're gonna die at 68 in 3 months or if you're gonna live to be 100. Um, if you start investing and saving and thinking about it earlier, gives you time to grow and be more prepared to make it into retirement or to hit your goals. So yeah, the sooner you can start thinking about it and working on a plan and taking action, the less overwhelming it's going to be in the future, and the more likely you are to meet your goals, or to at least not have your goals be so out of grasp that they feel daunting and overwhelming.
Yeah, the crazy part is if you start young enough, let's just say you start in your 20s and you're disciplined and you consistently contribute to your investments, it's kind of hard not to wind up rich. Like it really is kind of like if you just don't do anything like you talked about crypto or like, oh, who's this Hawk Tua girl? I'm gonna buy her meme coin. Like if you do something like that, like that's that's on you. I can't help you if you're making decisions that impulsive and that uneducated. But let's just say you start at 25 and you put $100 a month and then increase it 10% a year until you're 65, you're going to wind up with millions of dollars. That's just the compounding interest, the way it works. Like you can't fuck
Yep.
that up. Like you just can't. It's hard to.
Yeah. As long as you stay out of your own way and you don't, like you said, buy the hawk to a coin, or try to start timing the market, picking tops and bottoms, and um, if you just stay the course and pick solid investments, and that's the things that we invest in for our clients is, there's probably nothing in the portfolio that you haven't heard of. And there's a method to how we put things together, and the purpose that each name serves in a portfolio. But, you know, it's nothing abstract or esoteric. It's you know blue chips and things like that. It just sectors and themes that make sense, and that's what stands the test of time, um, of investing. It's not finding the next meme coin or shit coin or penny stock or thing like that.
Right.
So it's um, a lot of people get started, doing their own trading or investing by like having a big success. And like a lot of people would get started in biotechs and looking at the biotechs, and oh, this company is going to get FDA approved, and they buy it and then it goes up 400%. Sort of think, well, Warren Buffett does, you know, 12% a year. I just did 400%. So I've got to be an expert. And then the market giveth and it taketh away. Um, so you see that a lot, but yeah, like you said, picking quality names, just investing on a regular basis for the rest of your life can change the latter years of your life for sure. Um, and if it's something that you're hearing about and thinking about and been meaning to do, the best time to start is today.
For sure. So we'll put this in the show notes, but if people are interested in working with you or talking to you, how do they get in touch with you, Brent?
So Ashley and I have a website, ponderosakw.com, which is Ponderosa Knowledge and Wealth. So ponderosakw.com. And our Instagram is ponderosa_KW.
Nice. And we'll
And
have
then
that in the show notes, guys. Yep.
I just want to, one other website, uh, the company that I work for as well is wtwealthmanagement.com. You can reach me on there as well.
Nice. And yeah, so Brent, when you send over your stuff for us to put the show notes together, please just include all three of those and we'll make sure they're in the show notes so our listeners don't have to go far. If they're interested, they just go right down to the show notes, grab those websites, and reach out to have a conversation with you about whatever it is they're thinking about. Before I let you go, one of the things I always do, I feel like we cover a lot of territory. We ask a lot of questions. We have great conversations. This one's certainly no different. I've really enjoyed our time together and I really love hearing your story. So let's just recap that again real quick. So we're talking about a guy who grew up on a farm and a graduating class of 65 people and is now working with tons and tons of money and is reporting directly to the chief investment officer of his company and has started a business with his wife, like and all the twists and turns that he walked us through in between, right? Action. Sometimes things went great, sometimes they didn't go so great. It's easy to argue that they didn't go so great a lot more than they did And yet here he sits because he refused to quit. He kept taking action. He kept putting himself in situations where he could learn and grow and pursue things that were important. So love all that. Really appreciate you sharing that story. However, I don't ask all the right questions. Sometimes there's topics I don't think about that we should talk about. So I always open the floor up at the end of the interview. Is there anything I haven't asked you, or is there any topic that you feel strongly about or is important to you that you want to talk about while we're in front of the audience?
Um, no, I forgot to mention the newest credential that I got, um, which is a chartered market technician. So in the world of finance, there's two popular certifications. One is a CFA, Certified Financial Analyst, and that's the like Warren Buffett style, looking at valuations, analyzing balance and income statements for companies. What the one I got was the charter market technician. That's like the technical analyst side, the charting, the drawing the lines on the chart, which was always interesting to me. Um, and that this was the first certification where I failed one of the exams. It was a three-part exam. I failed the second part of it the first time I took it. So I wanted to throw that last success and failure out there. It's a pretty hard one to get. So I I wanted to mention that I had that one. Um, but no, I think that covers everything.
That's awesome. And I appreciate that last little part. Like it's a great lesson. I'm 53 and I always tell people it's too bad you didn't know me when I was 20 because I knew everything when I was 20. You didn't even have to ask me. I would just tell you. That's how that's how smart I was when I was 20. I would just tell everyone I knew everything. And turns out I'm pretty stupid because I've gotten a lot dumber over the years. There's all sorts of awesome people out there that know a ton of stuff and they'll give you a ton of information for free if you just ask them a couple of questions and then shut up and listen. So, nobody ever crosses the goal line and spikes the football and does their touchdown dance. That's not how life works. You always have to continue to grow. You always have to continue to learn. You always have to be willing to say, I'm not good at this right now, or I'm not good enough at this right now, but I'm going to get better because I'm not going to quit until I do. And I think Brent's story is a shining example of that. And I think it's really, really powerful for our listeners to see and hear firsthand from someone who walked this path. I mean, there was a lot of times, think about if someone had come to you the day you packed up all your shit from the motorcycle shop and locked the doors and said, that's it, we can't come back, and said, hey, Brent, you know what? 20 years from now, you're going to be a really successful financial planner and financial advisor, and you're going to be running this business with your wife. You'd have been like, get the fuck out of here. No way, not going to happen. And yet here you are. Like, I think it's such a great story and that perseverance and the willingness to get back up and get back in the fight when things don't go your way. I think it's so awesome for our audience to hear. And I really appreciate you coming on and being willing to be so candid and sharing all those experiences with us. We loved it. Absolutely loved it.
I appreciate it. And yeah, just one more little tie-in. You talked about you know, the class doctors and the lowest doctor. It's he might have been the dumbest guy in his class, but he didn't quit. And he got to where he was by not quitting. So of all the worst traits that guy may have, the one thing you can say is he didn't quit to accomplish that. And maybe he quit other things and that's how he got there. So yeah, if as long as you don't quit, or if you do quit, plan on, transitioning at the same time and use that momentum. So don't don't stagnate, don't sit around, don't wait for life to happen. You got to figure out how to take it upon yourself to make it happen and to move upwards. So that's what I've always tried to do.
Yeah. Love that. Love it. Well, thanks again, Brent. Really appreciate you coming on. Really enjoyed our conversation and really wish you and Doc the best. I already talked to her. You guys are doing cool stuff and you've got more stuff. So we'll have one and or the both of you guys back on the podcast somewhere in the future as you kind of work through the book process and you build your business. We just want to keep in touch with you guys because what you're doing is so unique and your stories, your backgrounds are so cool. Um, we just want to stay in touch with you. So really appreciate it. And until next time, really enjoyed it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. All
All right. Thanks, man. Have a good night.
right, you too.
That was awesome, Brent. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Uh, what was that? 2 hours?
It's wild, isn't it? Flies
Yeah.
by.
Yep. Um, yeah. Let me know if you need anything from me. I'll send you the information that you. I got 1,000 emails coming through now that my do not disturb is off. That's funny. Um, yeah, I'll send you the information that you mentioned. A little bio, screenshot, or a headshot, links. So I'll email that over to you. And you said this will air probably December.
Yeah, somewhere mid to late December. I think we're like, we might be the week before Christmas now, if I remember right, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. Yep.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. Have a great night. Really appreciate it.
All right, you too. Bye.
Okay. See ya. Okay, guys, there you go. So, like we talked about, what a wild ride for Brent, from high school to Arizona State to trade school to his own business to the financial crash of 2008 to law enforcement to back into the automotive business to the financial business and working his way up through there to where he's at now with his wife, Ashley, who we've also had on the podcast. Love his approach. Love the way he is so willing to be candid about, hey, this went my way, this didn't go my way. This was awesome, this was not awesome. It just shows you that perseverance is the how you get to where you want to be. Talent is overrated. Grit and perseverance and a willingness to get back up when you get knocked down are the key components to being successful in the world. And then you got to take action. You got to be intelligent. You got to take action. You got to keep doing the work, and you can wind up in a good spot. Brent is a living testament to that, and love how he shared it with us tonight. So just a great job by him. Excited to bring him and Ashley back on somewhere down the road. So James puts it up right over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All the podcast episodes are there. Links to all our social media accounts are there. We publish a newsletter every weekday you can subscribe to there. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you consume it on. We're going to keep giving you tips and useful, actionable items that you can use to build a life of meaning and purpose for yourself. We're going to keep finding awesome people who have just super interesting and super inspiring stories because they refuse to quit when life gets tough, and life gets tough for all of us, guys. But you're going to hear from guest after guest after guest what they learned from that, how they built a great life for themselves after those challenges. You don't want to miss any of that awesome stuff. It's all right here on Salty Ginger Talk. Make sure you catch our next episode. We'll see you there.